All right, so good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. We have a pretty full room, and thank you for attending our first PTO meeting of the 2021 school year. I'd like to just wish everyone a happy new year. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the holidays, and we're right back in it. I do have to say it was great having kids back in the building with teachers yesterday. I always love a nice break, but it's nice to return. We had a lot of good energy in the school. We have a pretty, I think, a great agenda today with a lot of information. We are recording this meeting as usual, and I will send it out sometime this week once we convert it to a YouTube. And we're going to get started right with some PTO updates. So Kyler, you're muted at first. I have everyone muted just so there's no distraction. So if you are a speaker, if you could unmute prior to speaking. Kyler, you're up.
Good morning. Happy New Year to everybody as well. I don't have that much to update. I'm going to have Jan update you all on the blood drive that we just did, but I just wanted to encourage you to email either myself on the PTO email or TJ if you have any ideas for meetings going forward. We have only 4 more meetings, which is kind of scary, but we would like to have input from parents. The turnout has been just fabulous. We're usually very excited when we get 20 people at our in-person meetings, but to have the numbers that we're having online, and I know a good number of people are also looking at the recording. So if you have ideas of topics that you would like us to cover, student groups, things like that, please do let us know so we can make these meetings as informative, but also as pertinent as possible. So that's it. I mean, I'll make my normal plug. Please pay your dues if you haven't paid your dues yet. We can always use the money. We have a couple things in the works to celebrate our teachers coming up and all the hard work that they're doing during this time. So any funds are greatly appreciated. And let me just turn it over to Jan to just give you a quick update on our blood drive, which was our attempt to try to keep up with our normal schedule of activities that we normally contribute to. Jan?
Hi. Our blood drive was on December 30th at the First Congregational Church in Madison, and we had 63 donors, which will now support 189 patients, which is a great amount. They were pleased with the turnout. We had 1 student donor and 4 student volunteers. And we are in talks with the Red Cross to see what we can do for a spring event, and we're hoping to have even more donors and student and parent volunteers. So thank you if you've donated and volunteered.
That's it for us, TJ.
Great, thanks, Kyler. Thanks, Jen. That's actually great numbers, especially considering how different the blood drive had to be in the COVID environment. So great work on that. Hopefully we'll have a really successful turnout in the spring as well. So more to come on that topic. Our next agenda item, we have a special guest today. I'm really excited to introduce our new superintendent of schools. He joined Madison Public Schools on December 7th. You know, I've started one of my administrative positions mid-year. It's really challenging, to walk in the middle of a school year, and he has been wonderful to work with thus far, and he asked to attend one of our PTO meetings, and I said, absolutely. We're excited to have Dr. Cook available, which I'm going to give him some time just, to share a few words, and if people have any questions for him, that would be excellent. And Dr. Cook, thank you very much, and officially, again, welcome to Madison.
Thank you, TJ, and thank you everyone for having me here. It's great to be here. It is, as TJ said, starting mid-year, very interesting, and then certainly during the times we're in right now are a challenge. But what I've tried to do, and I think many of my colleagues have as well, is look for positives. And as Kyler Snow shared, attendance is up at meetings. That's partly related to being online, and so I think we'll, as we come out of this, look for positives to continue certain ways to continue to have people involved. It's been great. It's been 1 month, but the challenge has been getting out and meeting people. So this is really the best opportunity, I feel like, for that at this point. First off, let me say it's fantastic to have a high school with an active PTO. I will tell you that's not always the norm. And so that's really exciting because sometimes we struggle to get family input at this level, and have struggled in places where in the past to get that input. So it's great to have a group to be able to go to. A little bit about myself. I have been in education for about 24 years, last 7 as superintendent. So I do come with superintendent experience, which has been very helpful. Second superintendency here, hopefully my last, truly. I mean that. During quarantine, my family and I made the decision to move from up northern Connecticut to Old Saybrook, and had made that decision, really around February, March timeframe. April, we had finally a chance to be together as a family and not be running everywhere. I have 3 daughters, so we're very active. And then around that same time, I will say that the day we listed our house, I got a call from a friend who just happened to say, "Hey, did you hear that Madison's opening up?" Not thinking at all that I would be applying. This person was telling me, and I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." But it's always been a place growing up in Old Saybrook myself that I've admired. I've watched and followed and just always loved the town, truly. And I've said to a few people, if you can't beat them, join them. Because growing up, we struggled athletically and academically with Madison next door, and so it's just great to be part of this team. And I truly am impressed with the central office team and the work that they have done to have this school year open. It's I looked at a lot of reopening plans as we were building our own in Windsor, and Madison's the best I've seen, truly, and they've done a lot of work. And the administrative team at the buildings, as I get to know them over the last month, and even before that, I was able to spend some days in district, are just phenomenal. I mean, they really are committed and child focused. And one of the things that really impresses me is how many of our administrators got jobs in town and then moved to town and brought their children to town. And then as I dig deeper, there's people that tuition their children to Madison. And so that's just a tremendous I think statement about the district and the educational program here. But like I said, I look forward. I will join any meeting you want me to in the future. If you think of questions later on, I'm sure you can all find my email on the website. It's the pretty standard one. So feel free to email me if it's something you don't want to ask online. I do my best to get back within the day, if not earlier. And so just my focus throughout my time has really been about family, partnership. And I call it much more than involvement, because I really feel like we should be partnering with our families to make the education program the best it can. And the PTO is a huge part of that. So, as we move forward, I hope that you'll see that, in me, and the ability to, listen and implement, what we partner together to come up with ideas. In terms of where my work is mostly right now, it's been around the budget and getting ready to that. We present, again, to the board tonight. I think there's some interesting, exciting things for hand students. We are looking at, again, hopefully an SAT preparation program that we would look to as well impact our current juniors for next year. This would be next year's budget. So our current juniors who will miss out on, some preparation, who've had lots of interruptions to their educational program, but then also our current sophomores who would, be in their junior year next year and taking the SAT test in March. So we're looking at creative ways to make up as much as possible for our, for our students who missed out on so much. So it is hard. Certainly last year our seniors got a lot of attention, and they should have. But our current juniors, at this point in time, have really missed out on more, because they've our current seniors have missed out on so much, because they've missed out on end of junior year, and then so much of their senior year. So I'm hoping we'll continue to make that as best we can with your help. So with that said, as TJ said, I'm open to any questions, or feel free to reach me offline.
That's excellent, Dr. Cook. And again, welcome to Madison. We're excited to have you here. Look forward to working with you, throughout the years and doing great things. I could say it's been a great place to work the past 8 years. And I think you'll find that to be the case, each day. So we appreciate your attendance. And from what I think you mentioned, you're going to stay in and listen to a couple of exciting presentations as
Yes,
well.
I will.
And our next Our next presentation, we have Melanie Witcher, who is one of our 2 assistant principals, joined by Jennifer Aguzzi, who's the World Language Program Coordinator, and Dan Grenier, who's the CT Program Coordinator, to talk about the 2021-22, which is unbelievable, program of studies. It is that time of the year, which means scheduling process will begin for students in 8th grade through 11th grade starting on Monday of next week. And we're about to share some really exciting information for some changes that have occurred in the program of studies and the scheduling process. And then we'll finish up today's meeting with a presentation from Scott Cochran from Madison Youth and Family Support Services, which we look forward to as well. I am going to share a screen right now, and I'll manage the presentation, Melanie. If I'm not clicking when I'm supposed to click, just let me know. And
All right, thank you, TJ. So you can go to the next slide. Today's presentation is basically going to be a brief overview of some of the really exciting changes for this school year. Those of you that have looked at this document before know how huge it is in terms of the number of pages and the amount of content that's inside of it. And what we want to do is highlight the changes. There's been a lot of work done behind the scenes from specific departments with the coordinators, and we have the Portrait of a Graduate presentation was done in December. I know that Brian Bodner did extensive work around that along with his team. And so if you need to go back, you can look at the December PTO meeting to get some highlights for what took place during that Portrait of a Graduate presentation. But some of the changes we're going to talk about today include the World Language Seal of Biliteracy. So as TJ mentioned, Jen Aguzzi is here to talk about that great work. And then we're going to spend some time focusing on what the new credit requirements will be for the class of 2023 and beyond, looking at the future for what those changes will look like. Some small updates to NCAA, and then also just some specific department updates. And more specifically, we're going to focus on some updates that have been made this year to the CTE department, and Dan Grenier is here to share some of those updates. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Aguzzi, and she's going to bring us through some updates for the Seal of Biliteracy.
Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. So I'm really excited to tell you about our implementation of the Seal of Biliteracy for the 2021-22 school year. I'm in my 2nd year as program coordinator, but I've been teaching in Madison for 15 years. And without sounding too immodest, our department is really strong, and the level of proficiency that our students attain is very impressive. And when I applied to become program coordinator, I told the interview committee that I wanted to find some ways to celebrate that work and to recognize the levels of proficiency that our students achieve. And the Seal of Biliteracy was just a no-brainer on that front. So the Seal of Biliteracy is literally a seal that is attached to the diploma and also to the transcript that attests that students have achieved at least intermediate proficiency in 2 or more languages. And just with how desirable it is in our global community to be bilingual, to speak multiple languages, it's just a no-brainer to have that recognized on our transcripts and celebrated in our school. So you can go to the next slide, please. So in order to attain the Seal of Biliteracy, students essentially have to do 2 things. They need to complete all of their English language arts credit for graduation, so that's a 4.5 credits, I believe. And then they also have to demonstrate proficiency in a language other than English that's at a minimum score that's equivalent to the intermediate mid proficiency level from ACTFL, which is the governing body of world languages in the country. And so for our students, there's about 6 or 7 different tests that are approved, but we have chosen to focus on the AP test primarily for our Spanish 5 AP students. And that's simply because Spanish students take AP in their junior year, and AP scores, because they're delayed and when they come out, we would need that to be taken during junior year or sophomore year, but not during senior year. So for some of our Spanish students, that's something that they already take, and that test will work, and there's no reason to make them take an additional test. For our Latin students, they will use the ALIRA Latin test, which is an interpretive reading assessment. But the bulk of our students would use the STAMP test, which is an online test that we would proctor. And that would be for our French students, Mandarin students, our level 2 Spanish students, but also for any heritage speakers that we have. And I think that's something that's really special about the Seal of Biliteracy is that even if a student is not enrolled in world language classes at the high school, or perhaps they're an English language learner who has, I know of a couple of students here who are fluent in Spanish, who have come from other countries.
She might have lost her connection.
It was the same exact moment she lost the connection when we were talking about this yesterday.
That is true.
Yes, it is. So what Mrs. Aguzzi was talking about is if a student, and she may reconnect in a moment, if a student who came from another country who speaks fluent in Spanish, for example, if they met requirement number 1, which is passing all of the 4.5 credit requirements for English language arts at the high school, and they took, for example, the College Board AP World Language Exam or the STAMP assessment without having to take additional coursework, if they scored the minimum score, they can also receive the Seal of Biliteracy, which is really an exciting opportunity for our students. Jen was not misleading anyone when we interviewed her for the program coordinator position. This was one of the highlights she talked about in her second round interview, about trying to really recognize the great work, not only her department, but the students in our school who take a lot of world language courses. Like for the first time, world language is a requirement now of a minimum of 1 credit for graduation. That is no concern at all at our high school. Our students take 3, 4, sometimes even beyond 4 credits in world language, as some double up for that opportunity. So we're excited about this. It's listed in detail in our program of studies, and we do anticipate a very high number of students will engage in this Seal of Biliteracy, and we're looking forward to sharing the outcome after year 1, which we're putting into play next year, obviously. So I apologize for Jen's connection. It was almost perfect timing because in 5 minutes she does have a second period class. So I am going to transition off the Seal of Biliteracy. If you have specific questions, feel free to send them my way via email, and I'll get them to Jen Aguzzi, and we'll get a response to you very quickly. But we do think this is one of many exciting additions to our program that we offer starting next year.
Thank you, TJ. So we're going to look at, in general, the new credit requirements for the beginning with the class of 2023. So the biggest change is there's an additional credit that's going to be required of our students. So previously, students needed to earn 24 credits for graduation. They're now going to have to earn 25 credits for graduation. Keep in mind that the average graduate of Daniel Hand High School walks out of here with about 29 credits, so we're still well within the range of what our students leave with naturally. But the distribution of these credit requirements has changed significantly. So we're now going to group the courses that we offer into 2 main umbrellas. We're going to look at STEM courses. STEM basically is just a broad term. It defines the disciplines of science and technology, engineering, and math. So that will become one grouping of courses. And the second grouping that we offer is humanities. And again, there's another broad term, covers the academic disciplines that talk about human society and culture. And so we're going to basically take the current courses that we offer right now and just group them. Are they STEM designated? Are they humanities designated? Now, we also offer courses that might not fall under either of those umbrellas. So that's where we just call our additional coursework. So students will need to earn 7 additional credits, and this can be more specific to things that interest them. We're going to get into a little bit more detail about what it means to be a STEM course and what it means to be a humanities course. So when we talk about STEM designated classes, A student will need to earn 3.5 credits in math, 3 credits in science. That is no change. And then they will need to earn 2.5 credits in what we've deemed as a STEM class. So there's this new little symbol that you will see in the program of studies that looks like a little gear, and it says the acronym STEM on it. And these courses have been vetted through a committee over the summer. We looked at specifically what standards are in our written curriculum to determine whether or not it would be considered a STEM class for us. TJ, if you can go to the next slide. So we looked at all of the courses we offered, and we looked at the written curriculum that has been done a couple of years ago, and looked at the standards. And if the course included at least half of the standards in each of the following areas. So maybe the course included at least 50% of the class covered Common Core math standards. Maybe it covered some math standards, but also covered some NGSS standards. Those are the next generation science standards. We could also include some of the technology and engineering standards. That's the ITEA standards. We also looked at Connecticut Department of Ed's CTE standards. So if a course included at least 50% of any combination between math, science, technology, and engineering, then we deemed it with this little new symbol as being STEM. So every single course in the program of studies that you see that has the STEM symbol counts towards STEM credit, and you can be guaranteed that within that course, half of the time or more, many of them were significantly more than 50%, but at least 50% of the standards that are taught come from science, technology, engineering, or math. Similarly, the humanities groupings were determined. So humanities consists of 4.5 credits in English, 3.5 credits in social studies. For English, students earn 2.5 of those credits from their freshman year and their sophomore year English class. So freshman year English is 1 full credit, sophomore year English is 1.5 credits. So they've earned more than half of their requirement by the time they enter junior year. Then from junior year and senior year, they can pick from a wealth of electives to earn the remaining credits in their English requirement. For social studies, students have to take US history, they have to take civics, that's a state requirement, so they'll earn 1.5 credits there, and then they can decide what else they want to take to meet their social studies requirement. And then the last part is the humanities designation. So they need to take 1 additional humanities class. And again, we created a little symbol just to denote so that you could easily, when you're going through the program of studies, know which classes count as humanities. Basically, it's classes in English, social studies, some CTE courses, and world language courses that again meet a minimum requirement in terms of the written standards. So for humanities classes, go ahead and go to the next one. Thanks. So for humanities classes, we looked at Common Core, the language arts standards, and the history standards. But then we also looked at the Council for Foreign Language. That's the ACTFL, which is what Jenna talked about earlier. So we looked at the world language standards. And then we also looked at the State Department of Education standards for social studies and for CTE under the business management umbrella. So again, if a class has that little new symbol that you see at the top of your screen, you'll know that it meets our humanities requirement and that at least half of the academic standards taught will be within the disciplines of English, language arts, history, social studies, CTE under business management. So in addition to US history and civics, there's also 2 new graduation required courses, and this was discussed during Mr. Bodner's presentation for Portrait of a Graduate. Excuse me. So students must take personal finance and students must take independent project. So we added again just another symbol to make these classes really stand out when you look through the program of study. So you'll see the cap and gown and the tassel there. So when you go through the program of studies, you will be able to look for the classes that are absolutely required. Students need to take these classes at some point in their 4 years at Daniel Boone High School. Also for ease of use, All classes that have been approved for NCAA to be eligible for either Division I or Division II athletics will now have the NCAA symbol next to them. So when you're trying to plan for your student that might be going on and trying to play collegiate level sports, they need to meet a minimum requirements according to NCAA. So it's not just like Daniel Hand's requirements, it's also what the NCAA expects as a minimum criteria. So those classes will also be designated. So it's very possible that when you're looking through the program of studies that you will see, for example, a math class, and it will have the math title. It will also have a STEM symbol next to it because it meets a STEM requirement. It will also have an NCAA symbol next to it because it meets the NCAA eligibility requirement. So these little symbols will show up multiple times throughout the entire program of studies. Some quick updates. These are minor changes, but just things that you might notice. Last year, we presented on a new course in the art department called Prints for Peace, and they have updated that title to change it to printmaking. They realized that that title of Prints for Peace wasn't truly capturing what they were doing in the course, and printmaking definitely captures the curriculum and the course content a little bit better. So it's just a new title. Nothing else has changed for that class. So now I'm excited to turn things over to Dan Grenier. He is the program coordinator in our CTE department, and he's going to talk to you about some exciting changes going on in CTE this year.
Thank you, Melanie. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to share our new pathway, manufacturing production. Through a recent grant this past summer, we had the opportunity to work on this pathway. Through this work, we looked at standards, curriculum, we looked at Department of Labor trends, and as you've been hearing probably in the news, manufacturing in Connecticut is having some deficiencies in regards to the workforce. So part of the work of this grant is what can we do in the school system to help prepare our students, provide them opportunities to explore and gain some knowledge and skills in certain pathways. So through some work with local businesses in our area, you know, we decided to focus on manufacturing because locally it is an issue, not only statewide, but locally. So through our curriculum work the last couple years, in addition to this grant, we decided to take several of our courses, which we currently have in this diagram. There's 4 courses there, and based on the content, the skills, and knowledge, students that opt to explore this pathway can walk out of this pathway with several skills needed to help them move forward in this career option. They could go on to college to continue that pathway. They can go into the workforce. They could go into an apprenticeship type program. They could go into a licensing certification program. So through our work also within the curriculum recently, that's been a major focus for us. Being able to provide our students several opportunities to further their skills, to explore skills, to possibly gain some interest in trying to figure out what they would like to do after high school. So as I said earlier, we have 4 classes here. Some of these classes you will see in our engineering and technology pathway. All right, that's not by coincidence, that's planned. That was carefully crafted in our curriculum work. The engineering pathway has a few more courses, but we were kind of thinking ahead that we wanted to expand and explore into manufacturing. I'm sorry, you could probably hear the pledge, I'm sorry.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Into the guidance office, we have Cameron Aurora. And for today's quote of the day, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. And that's by Steve Jobs. And for the joke of the day, What do snowmen eat for breakfast? Frosted flakes. And that's it for today, Madison. Have a good day.
I had to pause there for the quote and the joke. We really look forward to the quote and the joke of the day for sure. So as I was saying, curricular-wise, we've been focusing on creating pathways, but what's different with this pathway, we're using this as a model on how we could revise our other pathways. And what I mean by that, through this grant work this past summer, we spent a lot of time with our guidance department and 2 guidance department counselors where we want to take advantage of being able to create some plan of studies. So if there are students that are interested in this pathway, what can we do to help them, guide them? What courses should they take? All right, does it mean taking some of these courses? What STEM courses might be beneficial for them to take? We also took and created some career surveys that we're going to be doing in our courses. And then once we get these career surveys, we could also take that data information to help inform our students about the options that we have. So this is our 7th career pathway. So when you go and look at the program of studies, you will see symbols like these. And quickly, I want to explain the course in the middle in this image, materials processing. That's our recommended introductory course to take. However, due to scheduling and other things that students need to take, all right, they could take courses in the outer ring as well. All right, it's suggested, but the way we wrote the curriculum, they could jump around based on their other scheduling issues and concerns they need to take care of. So I also need to leave after this slide to attend the class, but if there's any questions, I could take a few minutes to answer any. All right, well, if you do think of any questions or you just want to chat, you could reach me via email. My email address is on the website. And thank you very much for this opportunity to sharing this information with you. Melanie, off to you.
Thank you, Dan. So just a few more updates that we're going to highlight. Modern Communication has a new course description. I'll give you a brief overview of what it says here. Again, all of this information will be available in the program of studies, but just highlighting the changes that you might see. In addition to Modern Communication, we also have a new course that we're offering. This course is being required by the state. So the state of Connecticut is writing the curriculum for this course. The state of Connecticut is still deciding on a title for this course, which is why you'll see that it says African American / Black, Puerto Rican / Latino. It's in draft mode at the moment. So once we get a final new course title, it will be updated. And you'll also see on the next slide a brief overview of the draft version of what the course description for this course will look like. So this will be a new course that we will offer. All schools in Connecticut will offer it. And then we will continue to, actually have this class be filled the same way we would with any of our other classes that we offer. So as long as our enrollment is up, we will obviously offer this class if enough students register for it. But the coursework is still being outlined by the state, and so we're kind of awaiting what this will exactly look like so that we can kind of market it to our kids and be able to let them know of this new exciting course that we're going to be offering. In addition to that, there's also just been some changes in the special education department. So they have updated their course titles and their course descriptions. And the updates to the course titles are to, again, just further, to better capture what is being taught in each one of those classes. So similar to how we changed Prints for Peace into printmaking, we've changed learning strategies to now be called an academic seminar, and we changed learning connections to now be called directed study. And the course descriptions for each one of these courses, again, just an update to be able to capture exactly what is taught during each one of those courses. And TJ is now going to talk a little bit about the timeline for the 2021-2022 scheduling process.
Great, Melanie. Thank you very much. And this is just what we're anticipating, because we've never done the scheduling process before while we were dealing with a pandemic. And what we're looking at is beginning the process starting on Monday of next week and wrapping up that process for students in grades 9, 10, and 11 by January 29th. And if you're a Polson student and currently in 8th grade, you start a little bit later and you finish a little bit later as well. But this process really has some neat potential to be highly effective, and it's one we may consider even in a non-pandemic environment. But what we have done, and I won't take any credit for it, Melanie Witcher and Rita Bolin, who works at Central Office, have done some incredible work to transition our hard copy program of studies into an incredibly useful electronic version. We're actually, for the first time ever, we're not printing the program of studies, and people will actually receive a link. And we think that could be highly effective. And this, I'm going to show you just a quick sample. There are some editing revisions, but students and parents will get a link that will be this link to our new program of studies for the 21-22 school year, and every single bit of information and then some that was included in the hard copy is now simply a click away. From the left-hand side, there's registration information, just as an example, all very clickable, very easy to use, actually works very well on a cell phone, which I think a lot of students will use. I would prefer a bigger screen. But for example, under courses, if you click on courses, you can pick a department, and since Dan Grenier just presented, clicking on career and technical education, you can see a description of each of the pathways, exploratory experiences, and then if you were interested, like what's boat building look like, literally click on boat building, you get a full description. You could see that it's a STEM course. The student and parent can see that it's course number 530, it's a half of credit, and they can consider this when they're planning the scheduling process. This, I have to say, is a very usable document now. The printed copy, first of all, obviously was not environmentally friendly for a document we used for about a month. But the ease of access now is absolutely incredible. And outside of me asking Melanie and Rita to say, you know, can you turn this into something electronic in the next couple of years? They made that transition in a couple of months. It's incredible. I've gone through all of it. There's still some edits in process, but parents and students will receive an electronic link to this document on Monday. It will also be posted on our website, and we will be communicating the entire scheduling process in detail for each of the 4 grade levels, obviously not our seniors, but when I say 4 grade levels, I'm including the current 8th graders, to ensure people know our process, and that communication will be sent out in my message on Friday afternoon. So we're gonna wrap that up and be in a really solid place. And we did have to create a plan that would work in any model. So our scheduling plan has to work if we're hybrid, if we're all in, or if we're all out, because we can't be delayed in order to get the master scheduling done. Mr. Bodner will be waiting with great anticipation for all of the courses to be entered into Infinite Campus, and then he could start his long work to make sure students get most of their requests, which he's been incredibly effective at. So at this point, I just wanted to say a reminder, if you have any questions about the scheduling process that are really specific, you know, you always reach out to your counselor or one of the administrators. We will certainly help. If you have any general questions about the presentation that Melanie, Dan, and Jen will happily answer some questions right now. If you would prefer privately to start that conversation in an email, we respect that as well. But I will say the program of studies presentation every year is one of my favorites, because it does highlight a lot of the exciting things that we're adding to an already exceptional high school. So I appreciate the work, Melanie. I know it's a big lift, and great job. You know, we have a deadline, and again, we start the 21-22 scheduling process on Monday, January 11th. So, you know, tell your kids to check their emails, that's for sure, and we'll include you on the emails as well, just so you can remind them to check their emails, because there's not much time in the start and stop times for what we need to get done and entered into our computer. So any general program of studies for 21-22 questions? Again, if not, I totally respect that. You could reach out to us privately. If you happen to be an 8th grade parent who is attending today, first of all, welcome. But secondly, there'll be something separate for the class of 2025. That's amazing to say that out loud. That's currently sitting in our 8th grade right now. That will happen on January 19th. More information will be sent to the parents of the class of 25 by the beginning of next week. All right, so we appreciate your attention, and Melanie, thank you, excellent job. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Scott Cochran from Madison Youth and Family Services. We have had an incredible relationship over just my time here. That relationship was well established way before I got here, but Scott and I work very closely and communicate very often in ways we could support our students and the community. I asked him if he would be interested in joining one of our PTO meetings, and he of course said yes, to share some of the things that Madison Youth and Family Services do in support of our students and our community, not only within the school, but outside of the school. So Scott, I truly appreciate your time, and I want to turn it over to you at this point, and thank you in advance for participating with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Salutary. I really appreciate the introduction, and just to comment, I've worked for the town now for almost 16 years, and was actually working as on a contract prior to that. So I've worked here for quite a while, but I've lived here longer, and it's fascinating and just amazing to see how things evolve over time, and such great work that you're all doing with the curriculum and the programming, and balancing, I think, a lot of expectations and guidelines and things that you're told to do by the state, as well as are expected by parents and expected by students, and always just with the goal of educating our youth in the best way you can. So it's just amazing to see how all of this evolves, and the cast of characters that change, and new people who come on, today being a significant day, welcoming Dr. Cook, and we're just so excited to have him here and his experience, and have had an opportunity to talk with him myself, and echo what Mr. Salutary was saying. Just really excited to have him here. So I want to talk a little bit about mental health, and I will speak briefly on what we are doing here, but I think I have a little bit more of a message, and not to turn a PTO meeting into a large group therapy session, because really that doesn't work as well. And a lot of times when myself or my staff come to meetings with parents, it's in person, so it usually works better as a dialogue, which again is going to be a little bit limited in our capacity to do this virtually. So I'm Scott Cochran. I am the director of Madison Youth and Family Services. We are a town department. We are responsible for providing programs and services to support youth and families in town. We have, several areas in which we cover. We do a lot of work on the prevention end of things. So we have staff that are involved in, keeping track of trends, engaging students and youth directly in any issue that affects them. And that can be substance abuse. Most commonly, we are doing a lot of substance abuse prevention. That can be on trends like anxiety and mental health. So there's an arm of what we do that's involved with prevention. There's a piece of what we do that has to do more with intervention. So we have licensed clinical people, therapists here on staff. We don't have a large staff, but we do have people here that do provide therapy directly to youth and will provide family therapy. And a good chunk of what we do is really guidance. So it's part of our place here in the community is to talk with parents, talk with youth, engage people really at the community direct level, and whatever is happening or what's ever going on to help guide them. And sometimes we wind up being, the provider of the service, and sometimes we are helping to connect people with what they need. So we've been pretty busy over the last few months. As I'm sure you all know, the mental health impact of the pandemic was extraordinary. Things were trending towards kids expressing more anxiety and depression prior to the pandemic. And I think where we were trying to get kids off the internet and out of the virtual world, we wound up in a world where we were now depending on a lot of that technology just to keep kids connected, and whether that was to educate them or to stay connected socially. And so like that was a huge paradigm shift, and one we had to take on very quickly last year. So, and I'll say that, part of one of our overarching themes for Youth and Family Services is the concept of developmental assets, so that we know empirically that there's a number of things that a healthy community has. There's 40 that have been identified by the Search Institute. We've done asset training, and we'll continue to do that. But it's important for people to know that we look at this, and a healthy community really is a collective process, that it really takes us all and our connections to each other to make this work well. And if any of us rest on our laurels, Madison, as beautiful as it looks and really is, will not be as beautiful on the inside. That we really need to pay attention to what we're doing socially and emotionally to raise our kids, if we want our kids to have the best shot at being healthy, happy adults, and us happy, healthy as a community. So it's not something that just happens because we want it to, or because we, are able to spend a certain amount of money to keep our beaches looking pleasant or other things. It's work, and it's work that we all need to take responsibility for together. So that said, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. And I want to really just start with you all as parents. So, it's not uncommon for us to take a phone call from parents about what's going on with them and seeking help or guidance on something. And I'll share with you one that really stood out to me, that I took last spring, probably like an April or May call. But it was a Madison parent, a male, and I asked him, what was going on. He gave me a brief synopsis of what was going on with his kids, and I asked really a very simple question, which is like, well, how are you doing? And that conversation then proceeded probably for about a good half an hour of just him talking about how hard everything was. And I swear it was like I was the first person who might have asked him that question in a while, because so much came out. And why that stands out? Well, first of all, in his situation, he hadn't lost his job. He had a very good marriage. His kids were overall healthy. And he said to me something that stood out, which was, I almost feel bad about feeling the way that I'm feeling. It's just the pandemic. And when he said just the pandemic, and so much that meant, obviously, to him and to all of us, I'm sure, there is a piece of this where, we all are trying to cope. And I think what he was trying to say is, he was dealing with a pandemic, but could compare himself to other people, and knew people that had lost their jobs, and knew people where health was an issue, knew people where their kids were struggling in their education. And so it just felt to him like, amid a sea of so much struggle, it was hard to feel heard or special or attended to. So I think that's a very common experience. And I think as we've all probably have experienced this ourselves and have talked to other people that we know, everyone has their own story. And the stories are where we have a lot in common. And then there's things that are very specific to each of us. So we start in a place of empathy. And when we're talking with our kids, whether it's as parents or as coaches or as mentors or as assets, you want to start in a place of empathy. And I think where we as parents or we as adults have our own struggles with what's going on, for whatever that is, it's always important for us to at least acknowledge that, we're essentially doing the best we can, and that this, has affected us in our own way. We can sometimes lose sight of that as our kids are perhaps yelling, screaming, arguing, avoiding their homework, doing too much of one thing and not enough of another thing. And I can tell you as a therapist, where I've interacted with young people, a lot of times what they'll say is, this is really hard for me. And, my parent is saying this or doing this. And, I want them to know that I'm trying to socialize, and I'm trying to keep a connection, or I'm trying to figure something out. And so parenting through the pandemic really starts with empathy. And, I come back to this a very common concept that, we always try to reinforce with helpers. And I think, you know, back in the day where we all got on planes and we got to travel and do lots of fun things, one of the first things they tell you, as you're preparing to take flight, is how to use the oxygen mask should that ever have to drop in front of your face. And if you've all ever been on a plane, you know that they tell you put the mask on yourself first before attending to other people, which is a critical piece of advice when you think about it, because if you can't take care of yourself, you really can't attend to other people. So part of what I'm saying is your ability to empathize with your kids is also really your ability to empathize with yourselves and practice good self-care. And that's not easy in these days. And it's not always easy for us as adults, who most of us have our own stuff and we're trying to work, to support our kids as we should. But we need to begin with ourselves and making sure that we're being as healthy and coping as well, and that we're well supported. So we're working on supporting other people, and we're also working to support ourselves. So that's, a key concept I think I just wanted to emphasize here. So with something like a pandemic where there's so much of what's going on that's out of your control, a lot of this really then comes to coping. And healthy coping, that's about balance. It's about making sure that what options you have for your kids to keep socially connected, to exercise. There's a lot of out there. We have stuff on our website. I know the school also shares a lot of information on this. So like mindfulness techniques, they are, that's a wide group of coping techniques. That's everything from relaxation, guided relaxation. Yoga can certainly be considered part of mindfulness. And a lot of these things really have have been a boom for local providers. So there's probably more options now to connect virtually to do some of these self-care things. But again, the coping comes back to mindfulness. It comes back to balance and finding ways for people to stay grounded and to manage the various stressors that they have. Where you want to pay attention, where things might look like a problem. So there's a couple of things, and not to go through specific types of disorders or issues, because that's not something that we can really do in this type of a forum. But as a parent, you're looking for things that really are out of proportion with what is normal. So, if you're talking about, and your kid. So if your kid is typically a little bit more introverted, and you're noticing a drastic change, perhaps they're becoming more isolated, perhaps they're becoming more wanting to be out. It's just something that doesn't fit with what the norm has been. Again, it's always important to try to open up the communication and to support kids to tell you what's going on and to talk about it. And what stays in the realm of norm would be, a youth and their ability to express what's going on, talk about it, come up with some strategies or things that they can do to help cope with what's ever going on. And if that essentially does the trick, then you're okay. If you see something continuing to be more pervasive or more impactful in their life. So for example, if there's a concern about appetite, about sleep, about eating habits, certainly if a youth is starting to talk about feeling like they don't belong, or feeling like they want to disappear or hurt themselves or kill themselves, those are things that are more serious. And you want to reach out. As a parent, you could reach out to your pediatrician. You can call us. We can talk to you confidentially. Your pediatrician can, but you want to bring attention to those things. So at the point where things are more pervasive, more impactful, more severe, you want to respond to that. And it doesn't mean that you're signing your kid up for therapy because these things are happening. There are times where, where you can, interact with a mental health professional. They can give you some ideas, talk about what's going on, and give you some things that you can try, sort of try at home. And sometimes there's some environmental tweaks. There are some things that you can do as a parent that help you to deal with the situation that you have with your kid, and support them and help them grow through a crisis or a problem. The last thing I want to mention, which I think maybe is just sort of wraps a lot of what I'm saying towards a central point. It's resilience. It's really what we are trying to do right now, is to reinforce the concept of resilience, that young people are very capable of adapting in very uncertain and unpredictable times. That doesn't mean it isn't a struggle or isn't important and huge to them. And it doesn't put a nice bow on things and make it all better. Resilience is really just reinforcing those things, a capacity of a child to learn and grow through adversity. So as much as we can as adults, try to emulate those things and try to be good problem solvers and stay positive and focus on things that we can do, as opposed to focusing on the things that are out of our control. That helps to reinforce those concepts with our youth. And so, being able to empathize and connect with young people for what a struggle and how difficult this is, and then also helping with balance. So even though you've lost your sports team, you've grown in these connections with these other people that maybe you have now online. I had a high schooler last year that one of the first things he said when the schools closed and they, we went into that bigger lockdown, was he had never had dinner with his family so often as he had when the pandemic hit. So it really changed a dynamic. And in his family, he learned that was very valuable, and that they started playing more games together. So it did not erase all the other awful, scary things that were going on. It created an opportunity for balance. And so you try to make as much of a place for those things as you can. With that, I certainly hope that was helpful. We continue in terms of what we're doing with all of our programs and services. Our clinic is still working. We can provide virtual appointments for whether that's a parent who just wants to come in or who just wants to interact with us or talk to us about what's going on confidentially, or for where we're providing formal services. We're still doing all of our groups. Those are all going virtual at this point. We are providing some in-person appointments, and that depends on if the person wants that and can get through our health screen, and if our staff person is comfortable with that type of interaction as well. So we are continuing to work very hard to support our community, certainly working in step with the schools and with the community leadership through these uncertain times. And we're not going to stop working as hard as we can. We're not perfect. There are always things that we're learning and trying to do better. And with that, just thank you for the time. I don't know if people can ask questions or not, but I'm certainly happy to answer whatever I can. You can reach out to me through if you go through the town website, we have our own page, or our contact information is there. You can reach out to us by email, whatever works. If I can help, or if my staff can help, if you'd like to have a more detailed conversation based on anything that was brought up here, please let me know. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Certainly some great advice in some really challenging times. So I do want to reiterate the importance of taking care of yourself. That's really important when we're trying to help everyone else. But I would encourage you to reach out to Scott or Madison Youth and Family Services or the school if you have any questions or concerns we can help you with. We've had a lot of parents reach out, and a lot of students have reached out. We're trying to obviously be as supportive as possible as we navigate these this challenging environment. So I want to thank all the presenters today. I will be sending out the recording of this meeting before the end of this week. I think there's a lot of really useful information. And as always, if you have any questions that you didn't want to ask during a recorded Zoom meeting that's going to be sent to 2,000 people, I respect that. So feel free to send us an email. We can handle that privately. I appreciate your time, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And just as a final reminder, like Kyler mentioned an hour ago, if you have any topics of interest that you would like to hear us talk about at upcoming or future PTO meetings, please send me an email or send Kyler an email. We're always open to suggestions from our community members, and we appreciate that. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you very much.